The red button has been hit, and I think so we're recording this in mid-December. I think we're 4 days from Christmas, but this, I think, will be the first episode of 2024.
Oh, wow.
Matt Prosser,
well,
welcome to the show.
Double honor to be here, and now the first one of 2024. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, all the things.
All the things.
Are you going out of town, or are you hanging?
Schedules are a little cattywampus, so we might make a trip up to Mammoth, try to get in the snow.
Yeah.
Try to get to the beach, maybe go down to San Diego. Nothing massive in terms of travel. Traveling with two little ones, brings another dimension of stress to it. But
dude, we're flying to Maryland with Austin.
First flight.
His third.
Oh, okay.
So when he was really little, we flew to Alaska.
Oh, right.
And that was really easy because he was little enough where just started feeding, fell asleep, woke up in Alaska.
Right.
Second time, went to Maryland, and the Delta doesn't have direct flights to Maryland, so you had to do 2 ascents and 2 descents just to get there, and then went back, 2 ascents, 2 descents, and didn't like that.
A little different.
So I'm getting like cold sweats already thinking about those flights.
Yeah, it's live and learn, pacifiers, beverages, food, and entertainment for the little ones. Yeah, and then just patience.
Yep. How old are yours now?
They're 7 and 9.
Okay.
On the back half of 7 and 9. So
okay.
2nd and 4th grade, gonna get double digits next year, which is pretty wild.
It's it's so nuts to see, because once you have one of your own, you start realizing how fast everyone else's kids are growing up too.
Yeah.
Like the double digit thing.
You don't notice it until you are a parent.
Yeah.
And then it's like, wow, this happens really fast.
Yeah.
The old saying is, the days take forever and the years go by in a second.
Yeah.
And that is so true, because like all of a sudden my oldest son's 9 and in 4th grade, and he was just 3.
Yeah.
And like stumbling around the house.
It's wild.
So
are you guys like ski, snowboard?
So we're 50-50.
Okay.
So I'll snowboard with my oldest son, who loves to snowboard.
Okay.
But then my youngest son and mom will ski.
Okay.
So, cover all bases.
Yeah.
I'm not a skier. I hated skiing. I tried it once.
Okay.
Growing up in like the, early 90s, early mid 90s, I was all about skateboarding.
Okay.
So the snowboard was a natural progression.
Yeah.
That I picked up pretty easily. But then, you step away from it playing, college athletics, volleyball in college, and then pro. Like I didn't snowboard for a solid like 17 years.
Oh, wow.
And then you just try to go back out and do it again. Now that, I've got kids. So, but I mean, you hear some horror stories about snow sports. Like
no
people
kidding.
Get injured. I mean, you get seriously injured.
Well, I was going to ask if when you were playing at Long Beach, were you guys allowed to snowboard or ski,
no.
or was that like strictly?
It was strict. Like you don't do anything that you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, voluntarily at least.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, no one went to the snow, or if they did, they didn't say anything.
Yeah.
About it.
And there was no social media back then, right? So you guys weren't even tempted to blast it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could disappear for a little bit and no one knew where you were.
Yeah.
We didn't really have that much kind of free time.
Right.
Holidays, you get a week or two, but that's it.
Yeah.
The rest of the time from October, September even through May, the whole year you're together as a team.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, we were never allowed to ski or snowboard during basketball season in high school.
Yeah.
And then now I can see why. Because when I first started skiing, I loved going fast. But once you hit this tipping point where you're like, I'm going too fast to brake. Because if I brake, I'm going down. And then you just pick up speed, and you just hope that it starts to flatten out.
Yeah, no, and well, you'll do this when you go skiing with Austin, is that you'll be head on a swivel looking around for everybody else. Because the little one doesn't know to look behind at oncoming traffic. And realize that you got to see what's coming behind you where you're going.
Yeah.
And my guy almost got smashed on a couple of occasions from people coming down the hill, and I was even behind him trying to be a blocker. Yeah. Right? But I'm not, an expert skier by any means.
You got some size to block though.
Yeah, which is helpful.
Yeah,
which is helpful.
You're what, like 6'7"?
In shoes, I'm 6'7".
Okay.
I always say I'm 6'6" 3/4".
Okay.
Just round up because it's easier.
College listing probably 6'9".
I'm pretty sure I might have ventured into the 6'8" realm in a program back in 98, but yeah.
Well, you grew up in Ventura, right?
Yeah. So grew up Southern California, Ventura, just north of LA. Has a solid beach community. A lot of surfers.
Yeah.
And then
it's a great break out there.
There is Surfers Point, and then Oxnard, Silver Strand, just south of there.
Yeah.
Obviously Ventura County line north of there as well. But a small beach volleyball community. I mean, that's where I played my first couple of beach games. And my first beach tournament actually was with my dad.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah. It's a good memory.
That's a cool memory. How old were you?
I started playing volleyball when I was 13, so I was probably 14 when I played in that first summer tournament.
Were you an indoor first, beach second, or beach first?
Yeah, indoor first. So my dad played volleyball recreationally.
Yeah.
And growing up, I played all the sports, soccer, basketball. I even ran track and field, threw the shot put, did the long jump, hurdles.
Track and field is super useful because it's the basis of all other sports.
Yeah. Well, running.
Right.
I mean, I think looking back at my childhood, running was super important for the physical development of your muscles, to your biomechanics. And seeing kids now that are growing really quickly. I mean, I sprouted pretty early on. I was 6'4" when I was a freshman in high school. It was very important that I ran and my muscles grew with my bones, right? And fortunately, I did that. So I found volleyball late, but the running was a good foundation for being coordinated, for lack of a better term. But played them all, and finally I was just like, Dad, teach me how to play volleyball, because I was tall and skinny. So boxing out was not my strong suit in basketball and youth basketball. And I wasn't a very physical kid either. I wasn't strong, right? I didn't find weights until I was in college.
Okay.
And so I wasn't into the physical contact. So my dad taught me volleyball out in the front yard, and I was hooked. And as soon as I was able to sort of focus that energy and aggression on, the ball, but then also have a team, but have the net between us, that was really my sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone always asks are you going to have Austin playing volleyball? I'm like, I just want him to play everything.
Right.
And you seem to have a similar background where I think the more sports you play, every sport lends itself to the other.
100%. You've got to play them all. I mean, especially now in a day of just pure specialization in one sport that kids do, and the access to club sports at such an early age, it's almost kind of scary. But being a parent of a 9-year-old who's right on the cusp of joining into that club sport world and trying to keep them out of it as long as we can is already proving to be challenging. But at the same time, it's man, you're going to play all the different sports.
Yeah.
And you pick one. The day will come when you want to pick one, because you'll have to focus on one, potentially. And that's fine. But do all the other ones first.
Yeah.
So, basketball, soccer, baseball. He even started playing water polo recently, which is fun because he's a water guy. He's junior lifeguards, surfing, boogie boarding, all the things. But I mean, I'll pepper with my sons, and we'll get some family volleyball games going on. And it's a lot of fun, and it's just the very beginning. So it's people are always like, yeah, are they going to play volleyball? I'm like, yeah, well, if they want to. We're not pushing them to volleyball, but if they find it later on, great. They've tried the other stuff, and we can go down to the beach and pepper, and or pepper out in the street, which I did the other day, which was great.
That's the only time Delaney's really touched a ball is when Austin's asleep, and we'll just run out to the street and pepper a little bit.
Yeah.
And she still got it.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it'll come back too.
Yeah.
The itch never goes away.
And the specialization, though, it's tough physically because you're using the same muscles over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And if you switch from volleyball to basketball, it's different muscles, and those muscles will help the other. And then soccer's different. And then even water polo's a phenomenal full body workout.
Right.
When you're doing everything, plus you get the cardio, but then the mental side of it too, the burnout, it can happen so fast.
So fast, yeah.
When it's just year round. So
I mean, I remember being burned out on volleyball, indoor volleyball. This is before I started playing on the beach and focusing on it. But, you know, all through high school playing club and high school volleyball, then going straight to college. And for, 4 years, you're just, you're a student athlete, but you're really an athlete student.
Right.
And that's all you think of. And then, you try to go play after that. And it's just like, wow, it's a big focus and it's a long time, and burnout's a real thing. And, nowadays mental health is more important than it was, say 15, 20 years ago, which is great. And And, sports coaches realize that too. And you do have to take breaks from it, because if you're never taking a break from it, you never get the urge or the yearning to go back to it, because you're just constantly doing it. And I fell victim of that for sure when I was playing, because I looked at it as, this is my job. I've got to do this. I've got to train hard. I've got to get these finishes. And if I don't get these finishes, then I'm going to be depressed. Right.
Yeah.
And never took time away off from the game, or had other focuses to kind of pull me away from it, so that then I'd be like, well, I miss volleyball. I need to go back and play some.
Yeah. That's what I loved talking with Misty about it, because she said that she would force herself to take, I think it was 4 months off, where she didn't touch a ball one time. And maybe it's 3 months off where she didn't touch a ball. It was just, she got after it in the weight room.
Yeah.
And then by the time preseason rolled around, she was so itchy and hungry for volleyball that she would do her practice in the morning, and then she'd get back out in the afternoon with her dad.
Yeah.
And they would do more ball control stuff. And she would just do double days throughout the season, do the tournaments. And then as soon as season was over, like, hard stop.
Right.
And I think there's something to that. I always freak out though, because I think I'm losing my touch. Because when I take a week off, I'm like, oh God, like I'm seeing everyone else get better. I'm like, shoot, like they're catching up.
The competitor in you is like, well, what's everybody else doing?
Right.
And it's like, well, I got to make sure I'm preparing like everybody else is. Well, you are preparing. It's just different.
Yeah.
Like, you're preparing how you need to prepare. And your body will tell you when it's time to go back to it. And when your body's ready, then you'll go. But if you force it or do it too soon, then it could actually be more negative than positive.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for the mental reps. I think that getting mental reps through film, or what me and you do through commentating, because not only are you watching when you're commentating, but then you're explaining what's happening, why it's happening, why this person succeeded or why they didn't.
Yeah.
And then I think I found that I can take now, I took like 2 months off of playing, and I just commentated and watched film. And then when I came back, the dip was only minimal.
Yeah.
And I'd credit the mental reps to a lot of that.
Yeah. I would agree with you. Not on a playing side, but on a coaching side. Okay. So doing the broadcasting, which is awesome, and it's kept me involved in volleyball and watching it and speaking about it, I've been able to take that to a coaching aspect, because obviously I'm not really playing competitively. I'm just playing for fun.
Yeah. Hello, 6-man. We're trying to bring you back out.
Yeah. No. The train's left the building. The 6-man days are in the history books, and I like where they are. But being able to broadcast about volleyball has then allowed me to actually be a better coach, because I can explain things better because I've seen it, or I can compare and contrast like what's working or why that didn't work, or almost even being like, well, this guy did it this way. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah.
And, the broadcasting piece is so cool to be a part of, because when I was younger, I didn't have access to any of this content or this volleyball. Watching the World Tour or watching professional volleyball from Italy or the VNL, I didn't see any of that stuff. For a little tiny bit in the beginning, it was like NBC Universal. But prior to, 2010, like, it was hard to see volleyball outside of the Olympics or the summer AVP when it was televised, back in the heyday.
Yeah.
So it's been really fun and rewarding to be involved on the broadcasting side.
Well, what'd you do back then when there wasn't really, film wasn't as abundant as it is today? Yeah. It had to have been hard. Growing up in Southern California, I'm sure helped, and having a dad who played, I'm sure helped as well. But how do you discover volleyball?
Volleyball Magazine, Volleyball Monthly, I think is what it used to be called. There was actually 2 magazines, I think, for a little while, Volleyball Monthly and Volleyball Magazine. And I watched Side Out, the movie, a lot. It's a classic. You gotta, that's, if you need some new character, you need to bring some people on, you should bring on C. Thomas Howell.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Maybe a couple of people from that one, because that's a great movie, and it was filmed all here in Hermosa.
Yeah.
And Manhattan, obviously, it's a great movie. If you haven't watched it, you should find it.
And what people don't realize about that movie is it made a killing, because it was a very low budget film.
Yeah.
And it became a cult classic immediately.
Yeah.
Where you get every beach volleyball, every volleyball fan They watched it.
Yeah.
And back then you couldn't just stream it for free.
No.
You bought it. You went to watch it.
Yep.
It made like $21 million.
I think I have the DVD somewhere in my garage or my storage unit.
You got to keep. That's a collector's item.
It's valuable for sure. Maybe you get a couple bucks for it. Not getting rid of it though. It's good.
Keep it.
Yeah. So no, I mean there wasn't access to the video or the content like we get now, and like I'm sitting there watching this volleyball from Italy, and it's amazing level, right? The competition, some of the best players in the world, or doing the Beach Pro Tour from India, or the World Championships from Rome, or Mexico, or wherever. And just this streaming platform now is such an amazing technology that can access so many people like around the globe. Like you have to be grateful to be a part of it, because even though you're not on camera, which is fine, I don't need to be on camera, but like just to be able to be on it and talking about it and watching it is rewarding, and there's still a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'd rather not be on camera. I'm sitting there in my pajamas.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't need to be on camera.
Well, when did you want to do volleyball in college? Was that something that you realized you started playing, enjoyed it, and you happened to be very good at it? Or is it more of I want this to be the next step in my career?
Playing volleyball or broadcasting?
Playing. So we'll start with playing.
So playing, I mean, growing up in Ventura in the middle 90s, I graduated high school in 97. So I found volleyball was probably, 93, 94. Not a very big volleyball community for boys in Ventura at that time. So, and I was the volleyball nerd, for lack of a better word. I had pictures of guys on my wall, Sinjin, Randy, Ricky, like these guys that I'd cut out from the magazine and I'd put on the wall. I played club volleyball in San Diego at the time. There was no club team.
That's a drive.
So, I mean, it's not like I was making the commute every 2 days.
Yeah.
I would play on the team during the summer. So I'd take a train from Ventura down to San Diego, practice with the team for 2 weeks before a tournament, and then go to the tournament and play with them.
Okay.
And so I played with that club team during the summer season for 3 years. 16, 17, 18 age groups. We got a gold medal. I was with a really good team in, this was 1997. We were 18 and unders at the time. And again, this was not like boys volleyball is now. Like boys volleyball has grown exponentially since I played club volleyball, and there was not all these different divisions like there is now. So fortunate enough that I was with a great group of guys. A couple other dudes went on to play in college, Stanford, USC, UOP, a couple places like that. And I still see them from time to time and have relationships with them. But it was kind of around that sophomore, junior time frame of high school that I knew that I was going to be able to play volleyball, out past high school. And because of that exposure of being in club volleyball, I was able to get recruited by a couple of schools and went on a couple of recruiting trips, UC Irvine, Long Beach State, Cal State Northridge. Like I wasn't the best student in high school. I was an athlete, competitive, but let's just say my studies were not, were not going to get me to Harvard or Pepperdine or Stanford or places like that.
They were good enough.
They were good enough. I did graduate. So took a recruiting trip down to Long Beach State and was walking the campus and the pyramid there and the coaching staff, and was just like, this is done deal. Give me the papers. I'll sign them now. And fortunately came in with a really strong recruiting class, along with Dave McKenzie, who still plays some beach once in a while. Chris Seifert played beach for a little while as well.
I didn't know you played with Seif.
Yeah. He was my setter for 3 years. And then we had a great run. We in 99, we lost in the NCAA finals, which was a very difficult pill to swallow. And then the next year, as the number one seed in the local tournament, the MPSF tournament, we lost to LMU, which had Reed Priddy on the team. And at that time, when you lost that early on, like you were out. Back when it was only Final Four teams went to the finals.
Yeah.
And 3 automatics, 1 at large. And if you lost too early, like regardless, like you weren't going to get the at large. And so we were out, and that was one of the most maddening points of my life due to sports was losing that match. And I'm a pretty patient individual, can kind of rein in my emotions for the most part pretty well. But that one was the roughest, one of the roughest.
And college isn't exactly the most emotional stable time of a young man's life.
No, it's not. There's a lot of other factors going on there for sure. Fortunately, no social media involvement or anything like that. But I mean, when you devote that much time to a goal with a group of guys on a team and then you don't achieve it, I mean, it takes a long time to recover from that.
Yeah.
And I was a first-team All-American. We had 2 or 3 first-team All-Americans on that team. And so we were favorites to win a national championship, which is that's the goal every single year. And when you come up short of your goal like that, too early, it stings.
That's the tough thing about sports, is that a lot of times the team who ends up the champion isn't necessarily the best team, it's the hottest team.
100%.
And that's why I get really nervous when a lot of the beach athletes in particular put all their eggs in the Olympic basket, where you're trying this thing for 4 years.
Yeah.
And you might just get you might win pool and get a shit draw.
Yeah.
Like Phil and Nick,
yeah,
win pool, come out,
yeah.
Allison and Bruno win pool, and they run into each other in the quarterfinals.
On a windy day in Rio.
Right.
Like,
and
that's a tough battle to fight.
And so your gold medal match was in the quarterfinals.
Right.
And so people look back and say, well, the United States hasn't won a medal since 2012. And you look at it, it's like, well, or since, 2008 was our last men's medal?
Yeah.
It's like, well, a lot of it's luck of the draw, especially in the Olympics. I'd rather put the weight in a world championship or just how many medals have you won in that quad.
Right.
I think that's a better indicator.
But also you have to go into that event and you got to take care of your business.
Yeah.
And I don't think Phil and Nick took care of their business in pool play, where the point ratio hurt them because they either gave up a set. I don't recall if they lost a match in pool play to someone that they should have beat.
I think they lost a set to Argentina.
Yeah. So I think that's going to hurt the draw for them. And unfortunately, it caught up to them.
Yeah.
Right.
Or that was Tokyo that they lost a set to Argentina. I forget what happened in Rio.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like in 2008 when Phil and Todd won gold.
Yeah.
They lost their opening pool play match.
To Samoa.
Right. Now, they're good. Don't get me wrong. But at the time, that was a huge upset.
I think it's still considered the biggest upset in Olympic beach history. Because not only had Samoilov's, who was he? Was he with Plavins?
It was Plavins, yeah.
Samoilov's and Plavins.
Yeah.
Not only had they not even so much as taken a set off of them, they hadn't come within like 6.
Right.
And then Phil cracks me up about that story, and Todd does too, because Todd doesn't walk at the opening ceremonies because they're playing the next morning.
Yeah.
Phil's like, oh, it's the Olympics, I'm walking.
Yeah.
Well, he comes out, and Phil says they hadn't served me one ball. Anytime we'd played them, they served him every single ball, and he came out, and he said his legs were tired from walking around, didn't sleep well.
Yeah.
And Todd, of course, is just like, yeah, it was terrible.
That's classic Todd right there. Classic
But
Todd.
what's funny is that them losing gave them the best draw you could have possibly asked for. They played Georgia in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, but those were two Brazilian guys.
But they weren't. They were playing for Georgia,
right?
Because they couldn't cut it in Brazil,
right?
So you're playing really Brazil's 5s or 6s,
right?
And that's a pretty good draw.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens in Paris.
Very.
I mean, the competitiveness, the parity of both sides right now on the World Tour is pretty wild.
Yeah,
I mean, it's strong, and any team can win. I mean, you're right. Whichever team is hot, they're the most dangerous. Because I mean, we've seen that anybody can beat anybody now, especially with Czech winning the World Championships, who were some serious underdogs, versus Sweden or Norway or Brazil or even us. Like it'll be anyone's medals to win for sure.
Very much so. Who would you pick as your Paris podium? Let's say the brackets work out as they should. So you got the 1, 2, 3, 4. They're on different sides.
Yeah.
Only upset, the biggest upset would be like a 4 versus 5 if the 5 makes it through. Who would you take to podium?
I mean, it unfortunately, it's probably going to be pretty vanilla Like you're going to say Norway, Sweden are going to be up there. The number 3, I mean, is a bit of a toss-up. It could be Italy. It could be Brazil. It could be us. You know, Andy and Miles, I think, have a great chance if they're playing strong, right? But again, kind of like what you were saying in your last episode, is who's playing the best defense, right? Because defense wins championships, right? And if you've got a guy at the net who's blocking really well and a guy behind him who's on point defensively, they're going to be really hard to score on. Even with this new system of offense that guys run, you know, with the jump setting and the optioning and all the things. Honestly, I don't know if you can pick just one for third. And I don't think it will.
Yeah.
I'll stay Switzerland right now. But there's a bunch of them that could do it. There's 4 teams that could get third.
Easily.
Or there's 4 more teams that could be on the podium.
Right.
And then amongst those 6 teams, like anybody can pretty much beat anybody. There's, you know, maybe 2 or 3 that are above them just a little bit.
Right.
But then on the women's side, I mean, again, anybody can beat anybody.
Right.
I mean, Canada's right there. Like, when was the last time, other than, well, I guess Pavin and Melissa were the world champions. But again, Brazil, you know, the U.S., we've got 2 teams. Taryn and Kristen are going to be really hard to beat.
Yes.
So, I mean, could potentially we get 3 medals, 4 medals
that'd be something.
in Paris? That would be huge for the sport. And like our sport, not just domestically, but internationally also, is just climbing, right? It's an amazing time to see what's happening with the landscape of volleyball, both indoors and beach volleyball.
Indoors especially. The numbers from the indoor NCAA championships were massive. It was 1.9 million for the viewers, finals.
Which is amazingly great. And then just under 20,000 on site.
It was sold out.
It was sold out for that arena. Like, I mean, that's terrific. And the NCAA better start planning ahead of finding bigger venues, right, for the national championship game, because, you know, they plan several years out. So next year it's done. Like, and I believe Long Beach State's getting the men's Final Four.
Okay.
Either this year or next. I mean, their capacity is like 6,000 people. And
does the men's sell out like the women's?
No, because, well, last year it was in Virginia, right?
Okay.
I mean, you're not going to sell out. And they don't run a concurrent conference like the AVCA does for the women's, right? So there's a lot of people missing from that already. It would be great if they sold out. I mean, a few years back, you know, they did the Final Four at Pauley Pavilion at UCLA for the men. Long Beach against Hawaii, which has become a real big rivalry. You know, maybe 6,000, 6,500 people were there. You know, Pauley holds what, 12,000 maybe?
Probably at least.
Somewhere around there. Big. It's pretty big. I don't know if it'll ever sell out for a men's volleyball match. Unfortunately, let's hope so. But no, typically they don't sell out for men's championship matches.
Yeah. What's interesting is to see the contrast between how the men's and women's indoor stuff does on YouTube. The men's pops off on YouTube, whereas the women's doesn't do quite as well. So, like, the replay of UCLA versus Long Beach, that final, which was funny, the first indoor match I ever watched in my life was that championship.
I think I remember you being there.
This is crazy. It's like, what have I been missing out on?
This is like 2018.
It would have been when it was TJ.
Yeah.
Tuaniga.
Yeah.
Enzing,
right.
Amato.
Yeah.
Then you had Mike Ma, Kofi. I think Hagen had just graduated. Dylan Emery.
The year after.
Yeah.
I think it was 2018.
Okay. That seems right.
Yeah.
But because that match has a ton of views on YouTube, but I don't know if that it will ever get the linear TV numbers. I feel like men's just has a bigger sort of YouTube audience than women. I don't know why.
Hangers-ons watching the replays in their downtime. I mean, that was a great match. You know, I was at that match too, and being an alumni at Long Beach, like, obviously you're going to be there. That was the first time that they won, you know, since 91. And so that was a big deal. And they'd been to the Final Four a couple of times. We'd been to the championship game a couple of times.
Yeah.
We had our opportunities, but just never were able to capitalize on it. fortunately, then they went on to make another national championship the next year at the Pyramid with TJ and Josh and Kyle. And those guys have gone on to play professionally in Europe and are having great careers with the national team. And hopefully they can bring home, a medal too, because the indoor side of volleyball going into Paris is going to be very interesting also.
Yeah, who are the big dogs indoors? But I mean, well, is Russia allowed? Can they compete in team sports?
So not right. I mean, Russia has not been competing in any international indoor or beach volleyball.
Okay.
For the last, almost 2 years.
Because in individual sports, tennis, they're okay. And the IOC just approved that Russians and Belarusians can compete in the Olympics. But I was talking with Denise Austin about it, and she said that she thinks it's just individuals, but not team sports. So I didn't know if you knew anything about Russia on the team side.
I don't have any insights on that. Russia, the men's Russian team, before they invaded Ukraine, was doing very good things. I think in Tokyo they were right up there. I got to work on my history clearly.
Well, they're huge.
Yeah, no, they've got
7 footers.
Yeah, no, I mean they obviously traditionally they've always had a really good team.
Yeah,
and they've won medals. They've had guys playing very good volleyball as of late. And if they are able to play as a team, it's going to offer a very strange dynamic because no one has seen those guys play as a team professionally or, in the VNL or World Championships. So it's going to be a big unknown. I don't think they're going to be able to do it, but I wouldn't bet any money on that.
Got it. So you got Poland.
So Poland
is fantastic.
Poland is legit right now. They're very, very strong. Brazil is very good. Obviously, the United States is right there. Matt Anderson's still, a top opposite in the world, which is wild because then he'll go play internationally for his club team and play outside hitter. I think he's the only player that does that, kind of pull double duty in 2 different positions, professionally and then for the national team.
It's impressive.
And still be able to contribute, right? Because guys are so specialized now. Mm-hmm. But then you'll see TJ do that as well. He'll play outside, and then if something comes up, Sproul will move into the opposite, and he'll, the adjustments pay off sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? So Poland, U.S., not Germany, Brazil, even Slovenia is pretty strong right now. Argentina is right there. I think on the men's side, there's 6 good teams that could probably contend for medals. Mm-hmm. And that quarterfinal round is going to be massive because there's not going to be any walkovers once you get out of pool play.
I like watching Japan.
Japan is
They're
great
fun,
too.
Man.
Super fun. Dude, Yuji Nishida, the lefty opposite who jumps like 46 inches.
It's crazy.
Is wild to watch.
And I love watching Takahashi.
Yeah, Ron.
They fly, dude. They all have like 40 inch vertical.
They're all really good. And Japan plays this real precise style of volleyball where they're passing and their defense. You see it a little bit more on the women's side because it's just a little bit different in terms of the speed of the game, but so precise. And it's funny that Japan's coach is French.
Really?
Yeah, he's a French guy that's been coaching them for, I think, the last 2 quads. So they qualified for Paris already, winning that Olympic qualifier. Not winning, but being one of the top 2 teams.
Doing good enough.
And so they're in. On the women's side, Turkey is going to surprise a lot of teams, I think. They have some really strong athletes. They've benefited from some transfers. Vargas being one of them, who came over from Cuba and did the renationalization.
Okay.
She's amazingly good. She's like 6'4", scary athletic. So they're very good. Poland is still really good. Obviously, United States, they're defending gold medalists. And Karch has such a deep training gym to pull his squad from, right? Yeah. That's going to be very interesting to see what happens for the women's side. Brazil's right there, obviously, as well. Italy's going to be in the mix. And I'm probably forgetting another European team in there. Japan is good as well. So, I mean, again, all comes down to the quarterfinal matchup, right?
Yeah.
So
you have such a deep well of knowledge on the whole. You have the whole holistic view of volleyball because you played in high school, played in college, All-American, played in NCAA final. You played overseas indoors, right?
Yeah, briefly for a season.
And then you come back, you played professionally on the beach, you've coached on the beach, and have you coached on the beach too?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so that's the one resume point you're missing.
That's the one thing I got to add to the resume for sure. If anyone needs a coach, a rookie coach,
because you've coached, you broadcast, you've just had the whole 360 view.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this recently. I just turned 45 last month, and so I was thinking, well, I started playing volleyball when I was 13, so 32 years of my life has been involved in volleyball since I began, and so it's fun. I have taken time away from the sport too. I mean, in 2010 when the AVP went bankrupt, that's when I was playing and fully invested in it, and then it went bottoms up or belly up, whatever you want to call it. I got into some, I did commercial real estate. I tried other careers, still dabbled in volleyball, still played, still coached, but it wasn't the priority, unfortunately. I even tried to start a sand volleyball club real early on down in like Southern Orange County.
Okay.
So maybe I did coach a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it just offers kind of, offers experience, I mean, the broadcasting, I can bring my playing, insights into it, and along with the coaching insights into the broadcasting. And I can see, the next generation of players, like yourself or the guys that are coming back into it and training and offer up any sort of insights or experiences that they may not have, kind of like seen come at them yet. And then I'll see guys like, Rosie or Ferbs or, Todd or these guys that have gone on to coach, or Dane Blanton. I mean, Dane and I have broadcasted together, but we also played together for a couple of tournaments back in 2008. So that was a full circle moment when I got to broadcast with him, at the AVP this last summer. So I think, experience is a huge takeaway from doing all of those things. And, again, it just offers perspective, right? We can relate to what the players are going through in certain moments of a game that now I can share broadcasting, which is where I think I take the biggest value away, or offer the biggest value to a viewer. But then also allows me to kind of complete the circle at the same time. That's what I enjoy about doing it.
Yeah. What I always love asking people who went through that bankruptcy period, and what was that like? Because that's when you were peaking.
Oh, yeah.
I would consider that the prime of your career as a player, for
sure.
That's because you were, and John Mayer.
Yeah.
So you were playing together at the time, maybe?
Johnny and I were partners, and I'll give you the brief story.
Yeah.
Okay. 2010, I had stepped away from coaching at Long Beach State because I wanted to purely focus on AVP. I had been playing 2006, 7, 8, kind of ranking was going the right direction, playing with guys. My points, my rankings were going up, good finishes, season of the ninths, here's an occasional 7th, made it to a Sunday, and then, the 9th or 13th or whatever. But that summer, John and I paired up, and John had been playing with like Jeff Nygaard, and he had won, I believe, already. And I was like, yeah, dude, let's do this, right? And we had been partners on and off. We did a World University Championships tournament once and got second or whatever. And John and I knew each other for a long time, played well together. We were a good partner. We complemented one another. So 2010, we're playing in Hermosa, and we were the 13 seed, and we roll through the main draw. We beat Walk Fogel, Billy Strickland. We beat Rosie and Jake in Hermosa, which was a hard thing to do. And I've always said that Hermosa is one of the hardest places to play. I always thought the sand in Hermosa was deeper than the sand in Manhattan.
I think 100%.
Okay. So, and traditionally, I always struggled in Hermosa sand. Being the blocker, running up, I would start cramping, qualify here and there. Never really had a great finish in Hermosa. We make it to, Sunday morning, and we lose to Phil and Todd in the winners finals, which, in 2, it was kind of close, but like that round with Phil and Todd, if you can't get them then, you might not be able to get them at all because you're in full speed, they're at like 80%, right? Anyways, after that, we beat Sean Scott and John Hayden.
That's a big win then.
A huge win for us, and we had battled with those guys a lot. Beat them. Then we played Nygaard and Matt Olson in the semis. And to that point, I'd only been in maybe one other semifinal in Chicago. And I grew up with Matt Olson. We played club volleyball together in San Diego.
He's freaking good.
Really good.
And that's when Matt was pretty much at his peak because he had won in 2008.
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah. So this group of guys, we were peaking for sure. So Hermosa, we beat Jeff and Matt, I think in 3. And it was just like flood of emotions, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in the finals of Hermosa.
Yeah.
My dad was there, and I'm like hugging my dad and family and, everybody. It was a huge moment, right? So then we're playing, Phil and Todd again, 2010. So they're still, everyone knows them as the gold medalists. And I mean, they smoked us. It was not an exciting final. It was 2 sets. It was like 11 and 13. Okay. Like it was not, not good for TV ratings. An amazing experience nonetheless, right? And that was my highest finish. Well, I mean, to that point. Then I believe the following Monday, there was a conference call with AVP leadership that said, we'll be doing one more event in Long Beach, and then the season's going to be done. And we do not have the funding to fulfill the rest of the season. We'll be shutting the doors, and the tour will be over. And
that's a brutal call to get.
It was so rough. I was just like, wait a minute. Like, I was just in the finals in Hermosa. I've devoted and invested all this time in doing this, and now you're telling me in 2 weeks it's going to be gone. And so that was a lot to handle. So the next event was down in Long Beach, and everybody knew it was the last one. I think John and I got a 9th or 7th or something like that. And then all of a sudden it was like late July, and the season's over with nothing on the horizon.
Oh.
So everyone's just like deer in headlights, scared, and has no idea what's happening, right? Or what to do now. The international guys that played internationally, like they were fine. They could go play on the FIVB tour. But the guys that were just domestic, like we didn't have anything. And so then you kind of go into like panic mode a little bit. Like, what am I going to do now? I just wanted to play volleyball. So it was tough. I mean, it was a lot of question marks for a while.
Were there any warning signs that was going to happen? Like when we look at this generation of players, when the announcement came out that the schedule was probably going to be significantly lighter than when Ballard was fully in charge, we were like, yeah, kind of saw that one coming.
Yeah. No, I mean, looking back at it, there was no warning signs. I mean, I think leadership obviously wasn't going to send those signals out to the players, right? Because then it would just cause probably some panic,
right?
And probably, a lot of other issues that no one wanted to deal with. So there was no early warning detection or science coming in on that stuff.
That's brutal.
So it was rough, and it took a while for anything to come along. Like the Manhattan Open that year was run by the city of Manhattan Beach.
Yeah.
And they did it old school, big court, no bleachers, none of that stuff. And it was an amazing experience, great vibe. Like everyone had fun doing it. It was side out scoring games to 15, big court, still had referees. There was, some people didn't like that they were doing that, and they made their opinions, out loud, which I didn't agree with because it was a place to play volleyball. And the rest of the players needed to have a place to play volleyball. And if the top players that were not on board with the rules didn't want to play, then so be it. Like, that's your choice. You're fine. You can go play internationally and you'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
For the rest of us, like, we wanted to play, and it was great. So it was a lot of question marks, that year. Manhattan Beach, then there was like the King of the Beach tour, had like the US Open of beach volleyball that same season in Manhattan Beach. Then, the next year it was like the Corona Light Tour, had a few more events. Then Jose Cuervo came in, and USA Volleyball kind of resurrected it, which was great. And then I think it was 2012 perhaps that the first, like, there was an AVP Champions event down in Huntington where I partnered with Matt Olson, and it was just like it was a 4-team, it was a legit tournament, but it was not a full field. It was an exhibition. Matt Olson and I actually won that one and beat Hayden and Sean Scott in the finals. So, which was,
When you guys beaten that team twice,
They were fun, and we had mutual respect for those guys. We trained with them a lot. John Mayer and I did, and obviously would watch how they trained because they had been around. They'd won a lot too, and so whenever you did get one off them, it was like,
it's a good one.
That's a good one. You know, he used that one for some fuel in the back, pocket. Yeah. But and then fortunately, Donald's son ended up coming in. What was that, like 2013, maybe 14?
His first year was 20. He ran 2 events in 2012.
Yeah.
And then I think it was maybe 4, 6, 7, 8, 8, 8, 8.
Yeah. That sort of period, I kind of stepped away from volleyball. I played a little bit, but I was newly married, had a young child at home and was kind of getting into, a career that was perhaps a little more stable in terms of, income. Than the volleyball lifestyle and competing. But yeah, I mean, I still missed volleyball. I played in a couple of qualifiers in Manhattan. I would work in the morning and actually came down to the beach for the qualifier. And
awesome.
So it was things like that because you love the sport. So it's hard to just not be involved in it.
Right.
So yeah.
I came across a fun little anecdote that our match in Austin, the third round of the qualifier, is the longest recorded match of my career. An hour 20 in middle of Austin
heat. I remember,
yeah. Holy cow.
I remember that one. That was a fun one, man. And I know that you touched Eric's attack for match point.
I was in the net.
You were in the net.
Didn't touch his attack, but
you were in the net.
I was in the net, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't see it and didn't argue it, probably because I was freaking exhausted.
Yeah, that was
a long one.
And then, because I was cramping at the end of that, I was like, we have another one. We had to turn around 10 minutes to play Dentler and Dylan Merrick. I was like, man.
But you guys, did you get it? Did you win it?
Yeah, that was my first main draw.
Yeah, that's right. You and Rafi.
Me and Rafi.
Yeah.
And that's also where I met Delaney.
So you're winning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was...
you're welcome.
Yeah.
If you hadn't won that match, who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. Would have met Delaney because she was off playing with Avery
I've
Bush.
won matches even when I'd hit the net on match point. So, it's full circle.
Yeah, sometimes it's good karmic justice when you own up to the net, and sometimes it works out that you don't own
But never at match point.
Never on match point.
And this was before the challenge system.
Yeah.
Which is one thing that I wish the Pro Beach Tour would do, the challenge system with the cameras on the beach. And I think they need to do it like they do indoors.
It would be super helpful. The problem is, from what I understand, it's pretty cost prohibitive.
Oh, yeah. I mean, logistically, to have whatever it is, indoors they have like 16 cameras around the court, but even if it's just on the sidelines, right? And there's a way to slow motion the ball making contact with the line, even if the mark is outside the line. Because I like that they can challenge finally, and the official will come down finally, because there was a long time when the officials just like wouldn't even entertain it. And that's got to be just maddening as a competitor.
The 2012 Olympics, it's still...
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. Like that
come down and look at it.
And they just wouldn't do it.
I know.
And there's so much technology now in sports in general, and volleyball is catching up. I still think there's room to improve on like data and analytics, like in-game data. But the in-out calls and the slow motion cameras and the Hawkeye or whatever system it is that can show the replay, you got to get the call right, especially for a gold medal or, massively important moments.
Yeah, I love that they had it for World Championships.
Yeah.
On center court.
Only on one court.
Only on one court.
Right.
Which, I mean, advantage, disadvantage, whatever. Because I still think, I'm still so curious, and we'll never know what would have happened in Kelly and Sarah's first match of playoffs against the Clingers. It was tight in the third set.
Yeah.
Like a 7-7. And Dory rips his swing. I was standing right next to it. Huge touch on Kelly.
Yeah.
And ref doesn't see it because it was the ref was on the other side. Ref doesn't see or hear it. Dory's arguing for it, looking to Kelly. It's not the player's job to call. So Kelly's like, no touch.
Right.
Yeah. And the Clingers sort of fall apart after that. I think it was maybe a 5-1, 6-1 run.
Yeah.
And Kelly and Sarah going to win, but because it was a hinge point where the match had a clear change of direction after that. And I'm so curious what would have happened if they had the challenge system. See Kelly's fingers go back. We'll never know.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the big events like a World Championships or an Olympics, I think you got to do it.
Yeah.
And you have the time and you can do the preparation to set it up right. For a challenge event, or even an Elite 16 outside a stadium court, like to have all those cameras and all the technology and all the computers and all the cameras and everything, I don't know if it's ever going to make sense for beach volleyball.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because it's just too much stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen the Hawkeye system at indoor volleyball. They have 4 people running it for one court, 4 people, 4 technicians, and literally pallets of computers and wiring that all comes into like this massive nerve center, and then they are able to work out all the data and everything.
Yeah, and indoor you can probably just leave the cameras.
Oh yeah.
You don't need to. It's not a new setup every time. But beach, I mean, there's so much buildup and breakdown.
That's what I mean. Going from event to event, like I just don't think it's plausible. Yeah. But in those one-offs, like the World Championships or the Olympics, you got to make it happen.
Yeah, I wonder if because they have the Elite at Roland Garros, which in tennis they have it.
Yeah.
I wonder if they have to take it down or move it, because if it's already there, you'd think that you could use it. But I don't know if there is a big cost of just turning it on.
I mean, if it's built into the stadium, that's one thing.
Right.
I wouldn't imagine that the cameras are built into the stadium.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
It'd be nice to see. I'm sure Emmanuel and Alison would have loved to have had a challenge.
Oh my gosh.
System.
Yeah. I mean, that's one that they need it for.
Yeah. Brinken Reckerman just taking it and running.
Running off the court. Surprised he didn't run over and like cover up the mark, right? Yeah. Because I mean, and now you saw it in not the World Championships, but the NCAA finals for the women, Texas and Nebraska.
Yeah.
Match point, if it doesn't go your way, there's going to be a challenge automatically. And that's just what coaches do now. Like, it's a hope and a prayer. But you kind of have to do it, because if you don't use the challenge and say the player hit the net, well, you could still be playing.
Right.
And so it's a little like anticlimactic to see a challenge come out at match point. But you got to get it right.
Right.
And if you don't use your challenge, it's like, well, what if?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Why not?
Right.
Just pull out the green card.
Yeah.
What blows my mind is when people get a challenge wrong. Texas against, who'd they play in the semis? Was it Wisconsin?
Texas played Wisconsin in the semifinals, yeah.
On match point, Wisconsin had a blocker have her braid hit the net.
Which is not an infraction.
Which is not an infraction.
Right.
And Kelly challenges it, as he should.
Yeah.
And they got it wrong. That blew my mind. And Holly McPeak was on the mic, and she couldn't believe it.
Right.
She didn't understand how the rest... And I was like, well, I don't know. It's like an 8-point match. Maybe they're just ready for it to be done.
Yeah.
It was inexplicable.
So, unfortunately, I think in that situation for the officials, I mean... You don't want to be pinpointed as like, well, you missed that call.
Right.
And I think they had missed a couple early on in that match too, because you saw some flaws in the challenge system during the women's Final Four where there was some issues going back and forth.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like the coach doesn't want to use a challenge when the coach is correct. Yeah. Because then it's like, well, you missed the call, official. And how could you miss that call? Mm-hmm. It looks bad on the official for getting the challenge overruled, right? But then at the same time, it's like, well, why are you even here if we can just challenge everything and get it correct?
Yeah.
So like internationally in Italy, which, VBTV broadcasts all the Italian men's and women's matches, they don't use line judges on the corners. There's just R1 and R2. And then there's the video check referee. And so if the ball is in or out, the players either see it, or if they challenge it, they instantly challenge it, and they go to the video check system. And it takes 15 seconds tops. Mm-hmm. It's pretty quick. And they get the call right, and they move on. And the same goes for a touch off the block. And like they just eliminate the line judge either missing a call or not missing a call, or being the person that they don't really need anymore. And I feel bad for the line judges because they want to be involved as well. But The best thing about an official is that you're not involved.
Yeah.
You're not, creating a dramatic moment because you got a call right or wrong, and now you're going to the challenge system to get it corrected. So
the best refs are the ones you don't notice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. And in Italy, without the line judges, it's great. I actually prefer it. But you have to have a legitimate, great video check or challenge system set up, and Italy has that right now. Going into next year for women's volleyball in college specifically, they're going to have to find a system that can do that, because whatever system they're using right now, you can tell that there's a breakdown.
Yeah.
the thing is, there's just so many different conferences, there's so many different budgets, there's so many different officiating crews. It's just logistically going to be challenging again.
Yeah, and what I love about the effectiveness of the replay system in the Italian league is that it is so good, and the players know it's so good that there's no point in lying about a call.
Right.
And the game moves faster.
Right.
Because if you touched it, you're going to get caught.
Right.
Own up to it. Get your green card, whatever.
And I think that's a great aspect of the sport as well, because it does show sportsmanship.
Right.
Right. And if now depending on the moment of the match as well, because if it's 2-2 in set number 2 and someone touches it and they missed it, then he calls the touch, like you just said, and they don't need to go waste the time. He admits to it. Now, if it's 14-all in set number 5, like, you're going to make sure that the video challenge sees that you touched it. You're not going to admit it.
Right.
And that's just sport. Like, that's competitive nature. That's aggressiveness. That's gamesmanship. Mm-hmm. And sportsmanship also. But I do think that brings in another factor that we could probably benefit from domestically.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, you got into commercial real estate. You did a couple different things, and your broadcast journalism degree, it sat on the shelf for a minute. Did you do any commentating or any journalism stuff until you started picking up commentating with the AVP and Volleyball TV?
So technically, yes. Because if you rewind the clocks back to like 96, 97 in high school, I was the sports anchor for the Buena High School weekly television show that was shown on local cable. And so, yes, I did use it. I've kind of always had maybe this little seed in me that, I do enjoy, talking about sports or being present in a moment of during sports to broadcast it. After I was done playing overseas professionally, I came back to school to finish my degree. And the fastest way to get through it was to get a broadcast journalism degree. Through my training and education of broadcast journalism, I didn't do a single thing on camera, which was crazy. It was a lot of print journalism. It was a lot of, writing and formatting and all the things. This was before streaming, stuff, before YouTube. This was like 2006, 2007. Not a single broadcast thing I did during my degree, which
during your
was a little contradictory, but I mean, it was a focus.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I just called up Long Beach State when I was like, can I come back and do some color commentary for the men's volleyball team? You got a great play-by-play guy. I watch it all the time. Super grateful that you guys even broadcast matches because it's, awesome. But let me bring some technical aspect from my playing experiences and my coaching experiences to the broadcast. And so that was, I think I started that in 2020.
Okay.
And obviously COVID hit and it was an abbreviated season. And I've done that now for 3 years. And fortunately, through connections, Dustin Watton being the man that connected me with Volleyball TV.
Okay.
He just called me up and was like, I know you're doing Long Beach State. Would you like to try to do some Italian stuff overseas? And I'm just like drooling. I was like, of course I would. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Like Italian volleyball, broadcasting it from home remotely, like 100%. And so I've got Dustin Watton to thank a lot for connecting me to Volleyball TV in Clayton specifically. And the rest of it's just kind of been history for the last couple of years. Whether it's VBTV, Beach, VNL. I went to the World Championships for men's volleyball 2 summers ago now, which was an amazing experience.
And was that one in Poland?
It was in Poland,
cool.
Yeah. The finals were in Poland. It was Poland against not Brazil. The finals were, oh gosh, I'm blanking now, but Poland crushed them. Italy, excuse me. It was Italy against Poland in Poland, and Italy won.
Okay.
Because Poland had gone 5 with Brazil in the semis the night before.
Okay.
And Italy went 3 with Slovenia. And Italy rolled them in the finals. Just an amazing experience. Volleyball, indoor volleyball internationally in different countries is a whole nother world.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about a sellout crowd, first of all, but they're singing, they're chanting, they're waving flags, they're blowing horns.
Their fans are so fun.
So much fun. And it was just like, wow, and every single person in the stands sings the national anthem. It was just a real treat to be involved with. And then the AVP has been a great broadcast outlet for me too.
When did you start with them?
So 2 summers ago, I stepped in for, I believe, Cameron, and it was me, Dane, and Rich.
Okay.
In Manhattan, because Cameron had a conflict, I think. And then fortunately, last summer, I was able to do all the events, which is fun because full circle, again, like growing up watching the AVP, Marlowe and Sunderland, right, and all the things, and then playing, and then being able to come back and talk about it. Especially Hermosa, Manhattan, the big ones, Chicago, all those things. So I do enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun, and I'm able to balance it all, which is cool.
And it's so fun to do it in person.
So
the
much
difference
fun.
Of an in-person and remote is so the convenience of remote cannot be overstated.
Right.
But being there, being able to talk to the players, feeling the energy and the emotion, and there's just something about being in person that you cannot help but be
you
10x
pick up,
commentator.
Yeah, you pick up so many things in person that you just can't see remotely watching a screen, right? The crowd being one of them, but the smaller nuances between the players on the same side or even through the net, to one another, because they all know each other, right? Or seeing what the coach is doing, what he's looking at, he or she's looking at during, in between plays. There's just so much more to see, right? And so much more sensory to take in that then you can relay through the broadcast.
Yeah.
And it's challenging to do it just in front of a TV, in front of a monitor by yourself, and a microphone. But the platform itself is it's
incredible.
Terrific to be able to even do that.
Yeah.
That brings out its own sort of excitement.
Yeah.
So
you got to commentate my shellacking against Marty and Rafi in Manhattan. Oh, that was brutal.
That one was fun. Marty was good that match.
Dude, Marty.
Rafi brings it up to me every time I see him too.
Oh my God. And Marty went off.
Had 11 blocks that match, I think.
Rafi didn't do anything.
He did. He really didn't do
anything.
He
admits it. He's like, dude, partner selection. It's key.
And Marty's capable of doing that. Marty's not a guy that you see very much. I mean, he's still
so
super
good.
Athletic and long. And he's been doing that for a long time. Mm-hmm. And that was just one of those moments where he was in the stage that he was able to do it. And it was a great time for him to do it. 11 blocks in that match was, unfortunately for you and Jake.
He's got great handwork. Yeah. And Marty jumps really high, but
he does.
In underrated skills, he jumps fast.
Right.
Chase Budinger jumps faster than anyone I've seen, but Marty, his load, he just pop.
Yeah.
And because you see a lot of guys, I go all the way down. I'm a pretty slow jumper, but Marty just has this quarter load and then
right.
And his hands are right there.
And Marty being what, like 6'5"?
Yeah, he's probably a hair taller than me.
You lose sight of him too because he's not 6'8", right? And he can kind of sneak over. I remember Mike Lambert would do this thing where he'd step way down, take a step over, and then go back and move, and he would surprise you.
Yeah.
And that's what those smaller blockers can do. But yeah, Marty's been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
You might get another chance at him, hopefully.
And I love Marty. It's funny because I ran into him. We got in the ocean together after, and he's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to play a tournament after this. But that's a hell of a way to go out.
Yeah. And that's important too. I mean, you got to be content with your performance if you're going to consider walking away and not, competing in a tournament after that.
How was that for you?
For me, it was a big moment, like in my life and just like in my being, right? So it was 2018 Manhattan Open, and I played with Eric Beranek in the qualifier. I hadn't played in a couple of years, so I didn't have a lot of points. And I was a year out of chemotherapy. So Eric and I had played together the year before, played in Hermosa and Manhattan in the qualifier. And Eric's a great dude. He called me up and was like, hey, I want to play with you. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to be able to give you.
Yeah.
I'm just going through this stuff. I'm getting done with it, but I don't know what I'm, going to be able to do. And so Hermosa and Manhattan in 17 were experiments, right? But then in 18 was able to have a full year in recovery from chemo that we came back out when we played you guys in Austin. And then I was going to play more, but work got in the way. A couple other things came up. And then we played Manhattan. And we made it through. Like, we'll just skip ahead, right? We played 4 matches in the qualifier. Had
Beat
to go
some good teams. Beat Lottie and Derek Olson.
Yeah, so Paul Lottman and Derek, obviously, that was a special win for me because I coached Paul Lottman at Long Beach State. And I remind him every time I see him almost that, I'm 2-0 against him on the beach. And he'll never get a win over me because I'm done playing. But yeah, and Derek Olson and I played against each other a lot, kind of, through the Cuervo time frame and the Corona Light Wide Opens. And Derek's a great dude also that's doing great things up at Washington with the women's volleyball program up there. So that was a huge win for us. And then we had to win 4. Like, we were seated so low that we played 4 matches that day. And we were actually the last match to finish. Matt McCarthy, I think is his name, and another guy.
Dan Beering?
Beering, yeah, from Chicago. So we were fortunate enough to beat them in the 4th match on the qualifier in Manhattan Open, and another just outpouring of emotion for me because, being an athlete and focusing on your body so much, when you get told that, you have cancer and you got to do chemotherapy, like, that's just a huge bomb being dropped on you, and you don't know what to expect, right? So going through that chapter and that challenge and adversity to come back and be able to still compete to a level where we qualified, that was a hugely important moment for me, my family, my friends, for Eric. I mean, we've talked about it before too, and just a really pleasure to be a part of. I played the next day, if you want to call it playing, but we got completely just demolished. We played Theo, and I think it was John Hayden in the first round, and they smashed us. I mean, we had no business. I had blisters on my feet that were some of the worst I'd ever had in my life because my feet weren't conditioned because I hadn't been playing full time. But then also my legs were just done. I mean, and then we lost to Duncan Buttinger, who I also coached.
Him and Daniel.
Yeah.
They were freaking good then.
Yeah. And I mean, look, we didn't have any expectations in the main draw. We were just happy to be there, To me, I proved to myself that I could go through what I had gone through and still play at a place where I was happy with my performance against guys that were playing a lot more than me.
Yeah.
And I'll always be grateful for that. So that was my last professional tournament. It will be my last professional tournament. Everyone's like, come play in a qualifier, play in a qualifier. I'm like, no, thanks. I'm good. Like, I'm all right. I don't need to do that. Because people hit me up every year. It's like, you want to play in the qualifier? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good right now. I don't have that. I don't have that itch to go back out there for a match or two and play against guys, that train 6 days a week.
Yeah.
4, 5, 6 days a week. That same summer won the Calcutta, the Labor Day Hermosa Calcutta.
That's bigger than winning Hermosa.
And so that's a big win. That's a big victory.
A big check.
Walked away with a nice chunk of cash in my pocket, which was pretty sweet. And played really good volleyball, and I was proud about how I played. So those 2 wins for me were a really good way to kind of be able to close that chapter of highly competitive volleyball, through what I had gone through and what I'd gone through with my family and everything with cancer and my kids, to see that I could play and kind of continue forward.
Ed Chan got such a good picture of you hugging the boys after you qualified.
Yeah.
And I still think that's one of the coolest pictures because you can see, like, you had won some really – you'd been at the top of the AVP.
Yeah.
And then to see what it meant to qualify after going through what you went through, it's super cool to see stuff like that.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you got to start somewhere too, right? I mean, I remember qualifying for this first time. The first time I ever qualified was in Manhattan, way back when it was a 64-team main draw, and it was way easier to qualify.
That's huge.
So to do it again, as kind of like the final event, like full circle, like kind of keep going back to going full circle, and that was a super special moment for me and my boys as a dad and as a competitor, as an athlete, as a volleyball player, right? To be able to say that I did that and go through the adversity of cancer and chemotherapy and everything that is involved in that, physically, psychologically, to be able to come back and do it is something that I'm going to hold, forever.
Yeah. And you had stage 2 Testicular?
Stage 2 testicular cancer, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How long was the recovery process for that?
So in my case,
that's still an ongoing.
No, I'm 5 years out now.
Okay.
So it's medically, I'm medically cleared.
Awesome.
Which is great. I did 3 rounds of chemotherapy over a 9-week period.
Okay.
Of infusion of chemicals, right, that attack the cancer cells. Lost my hair, did all the stuff, dropped a bunch of weight. Fortunately, I feel like I had a pretty good base that I was strong enough to go through it because, and everyone's a little bit different on how they respond to chemo. It can be really, really hard, and it is really, really hard for a lot of people. I'm fortunate enough that it felt like a really bad hangover for me at worst. Nonetheless, it was still very scary to go into.
Yeah.
After the 9 weeks, I mean, I think I played in the Hermosa AVP. I still had a port in my chest, which was where the medication got infused. And so that was June-ish, and I had finished up chemotherapy in April.
Jeez, quick turnaround.
April or May. It was May. So it was a quick turnaround, and that's what I told Eric. I mean, I still didn't have hair when I played in the Hermosa AVP that year. That's why I told Eric, I was like, I don't know what you're going to get from me. He's like, I don't care. I just want to play with you. And he turned 21 that weekend too. And so here's this just super hungry kid, super athletic, you know, and we've been friends ever since. The rest of the recovery physically was a good probably 9 months.
Jeez.
Of working through all the chemicals in the system, hair growing back. When your hair grows back after chemotherapy, it's not just the same hair that you had before. My hair was wavy, it was curly, it was red, it was weird.
Really?
And then
I didn't know that happened.
Yeah, you got to fully cycle through like all the medication, and you see it. Psychologically, it has been a much more difficult challenge to kind of get back to where I was pre-cancer, after, you know, or continuing post, right? And so that's been an ongoing thing, and it's taken time for sure. Those victories, you know, those small victories on the beach are a big part of it. Getting back and being involved in volleyball has been a big part of it. Getting back to work, some sense of normalcy, but a different kind of normalcy, because now I will always be a cancer survivor, even though it's not something that I'll wear on my sleeve, but it's never, I will never forget it, and I will always be reminded of it. And, you know, a thing like testicular cancer is so common that, and so many people don't want to talk about it, but it's a very common thing that people need to know about, that affects a large number of white males between the ages of 18 and 34.
Yeah. And
I was diagnosed at, I believe, 37.
Okay.
Which is way late. You know, so that's another thing of adversity and working through it. And yeah, so physically I was there, mentally worked through those things, and then playing wise, it was a year later, you know, in Manhattan that we qualified.
That's a cool sort of bookend moment to that, as you mentioned, that kind of chapter of your life. Yeah.
So now I'll play for fun on the weekends, just locally. Mm-hmm. You know, the kids want to play once in a while, which is great. But, you know, and the broadcasting checks a big box for me in terms of being involved in the sport on the beach side.
Yeah.
I coached a little volleyball the last few years for the National Volleyball Association, which is a professional men's indoor league here in the U.S., and broadcasted for them as well. So that kind of checked that box of coaching high-level professional volleyball players, which then kind of what we talked about earlier, bringing the broadcasting into my coaching with that stuff. And then doing the AVP and the Pro Beach Tour broadcasting keeps me involved with that. And it's a lot of fun. You know, working with you is a lot of fun. I mean, we've actually co-commentated a couple of matches. Hasn't been much recently. I've been doing more indoors, but you know, it's just a great platform.
It is. It's super fun.
Yeah.
It's fun for me because I think everything helps the other. I think that commentating helps my playing.
Yeah.
Because then I can sort of hear myself as a commentator in my head. Like, well, why haven't you run a different play? Why haven't you done this? I'm like, okay, if I was commentating, why would I be yelling at myself right now? All right, let's do that.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. Well, Matt, thanks for coming on.
Well, it's an honor to be here, Travis. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to be hanging. And hopefully we'll be commentating a couple more matches together
next year. Let's do it, man. I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
First podcast of the new year in the books.
Thanks, man.
Shoots.